for joining us. We're here with JEZ Bond, the artistic director of the Park Theatre. It's in Finsbury Park. It has amazing community work, amazing workshops for young people, opportunities for new writers. We're very excited to chat to him. Thank you so much, JEZ. Hello, thanks for joining us.
Hello, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
It's a real pleasure. I live just around the corner from the park, so I'm very excited. It's lovely, and it's been a sad thing to miss it these last few months.
Yeah, we keep hearing that from so many people, which is wonderfully heartening in a way. That people miss us terribly. There was a time I remember a few months ago when I walked out on this street. I'm here in the building actually today, alone in the ghost ship, and I walked out on the street and it was just desolate, you know, when all the restaurants were closed, and such a hard time for everyone, and it's also really brought into focus how much a part of the community and the local community and the business community we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so key, I think, and you're so bang on with saying that, you know, the fact that people are missing you is really sad, but it's also really heartening. It's a beautiful thing to kind of really notice the absence of theatre in our lives, because, you know, it reminds us of how much we miss it. I should have said, apologies, my name's Evelyn Miller. I'm an actor, and I've worked in various different companies, the RSC and the Globe, the National, and I've also done a Shakespeare workshop for IAMPRO.
I saw that, yeah, brilliant. And for those of you who are very observant among those watching in, you may have seen I've been upstaged already by my 4-month-old puppy. She's just come back downstairs. You may see her again loitering in the background, but upstaged by a dog. There you go.
So good. Well, we know we've got the guest for our next Q&A. This is perfect.
Absolutely.
So I've got, you know, a few questions for you.
Right.
And I think you're an unbelievably impressive person in that you not only you're not only the artistic director of the park, you also were instrumental in building the theatre, finding the building, building the theatre, which is just incredible. So I wondered, when did that dream of building and really creating your own theatre start? And when did you realise it could actually happen? There must have been an amazing moment where you realised it could be a reality.
Well, that's a good question. The answer to fully respond will be not short, but I'll give it a go, because I think it's hopefully interesting, and it goes back a long way. So, firstly, you know, my introduction to the theatre was through my father initially, who was a huge theatre buff. He would see shows sometimes 2 or 3 times a week. He'd go to the National, he'd go to a pub fringe theatre, he'd go to the Regions, up to the Edinburgh Festival, a real kind of eclectic range of work. And it was always his passion, although not his business, to attend and enjoy theatre. And he would take me from a very young age. So, you know, when you say about the Shakespeare workshop you did, you know, I remember being 10, 11 years old and I was going to see Shakespeare, and I remember seeing it and thinking, oh God, I don't really understand it, it's boring. And then suddenly that sort of transition when I thought, wow, this is amazing, I love it and I get it. And I remember those moments, and driving in the car on the way back home, talking about it, talking about the play, talking with my dad about the difference of having seen, you know, Hamlet then and having seen Hamlet, you know, tonight, and the difference of a production, what that means, because it's the same play, but we were comparing, oh, we like that Hamlet that we saw previously. So really understanding as a director what the difference was of a production and all those elements. Then I was very lucky to go to a school that had a terrific theatre, where the philosophy was that the kids would essentially run the theatre, run the building. And it would never happen, sadly, now with health and safety gone mad. But I was 14 years old and I was given a bunch of keys to my school theatre. Left alone in the building, you know, half the night, I would run up and down the ladders, rig the lights and the sound. And then we had people like Trestle and Red Ladder and the National Education Department coming with their shows. And I'd help them create their plays. Mommy's being very, very noisy. Can you hear this?
I can, but I mean, I personally think it's quite charming.
The theatrical ambiance.
Yeah.
So
the theatre's alive.
I don't know what she's doing, but well, you know, puppies, children and animals, right?
Right.
So that was kind of my initial love for theatre, and then you see, I still remember to this day sitting at the back of the auditorium at my school theatre and watching a show and watching an audience's reaction, and they would laugh or they would cry or they would gasp, and I would be sitting at the back there kind of going, oh wow, I remember that moment that just somehow manipulated them into some emotion. I remember that, you know, that was the lighting state that I helped create, that the director decided needed to be a little bit gloomier. That was the sound effect, and the sound designer tried a different one because the night before in previews didn't quite work, and that was the note that the actor gave, and it all came together, and there we were sitting at the back, the kind of puppet masters, watching an audience respond to what you'd created out of nothing, out of, you know, it was magic, and it's that I always held close to my heart. And also afterwards, when I was a professional director and I was a freelancer, I embarked on a career that took me to various regional theatres, and I was very lucky to work abroad. And I loved and love working with different people, different cultures, different societies. There's a real buzz out of that. But there's always something that I missed about sitting at the back of that school theatre, where you would see the same faces day in, day out. And you would get a sense of having bricks and mortar, having that base and nurturing an audience. And that was what I missed. And I always therefore had a dream of, wouldn't it be wonderful to have my own space where I could nurture an audience, respond to a community, change people, see them again and again, build those relationships so that we don't just move on. It's not a transient transaction. So that, I suppose, was where the idea was originally born. And when I was 14 years old, because of this amazing responsibility I was given, I knew then it was not just theatre that I wanted to do as a job. It was to be a theatre director and to one day run a theatre.
Mm-hmm. That's so fascinating. And hearing the kind of, you know, because I remember watching plays and watching very specific actors. I'd really kind of trace their journey through the play and think, that costume change is very quick, and how have they done that? They're back. Yeah. And yes. You know, but to really be aware at that young age of what goes in making a show and how different productions can make you feel different things about a character, that's amazing.
Well, you know, that's so important, and that's why I've always felt very strongly that we need to give back. I feel like there's a real kind of insular mentality, partly to do with England. I think England, you know, we are an island and we are very sort of insular in many ways, and partly exacerbated by probably how difficult it is in the industry, and a lot of people not necessarily being as generous as they could be because they're protecting their own little fiefdoms. And I've always been really clear that it's important to give back and it's important to provide opportunity. And an example I always use is as a director, when I sort of became a director and I suppose stepped up from being an assistant or associate director, people would say, could you take an assistant director? And I said, of course, I'd love to have an assistant director in the room because I think it's a brilliant opportunity for them. It's a brilliant opportunity for me. It should be a sort of mutually beneficial arrangement. But they immediately followed it. And these are the producers and you know, venue managers. They immediately followed it before I could even say anything with, don't worry, they'll just sit in the corner. You know, and it was a sense of, can you take that person, but you don't need to worry about them because they're not going to sort of disrupt you or challenge you or have an opinion. And I would actively say, well, actually, I want someone who's going to give an opinion, someone who's going to challenge me, because what's the worst that can happen? They come up with a better idea. Well, I can own that and be like, well, I brought them into the room. I mean, you don't have to be like, oh, well, they've done a better idea than you. theatre directing is about collaborating, about getting the best out of everyone, and I believe you have to be open to that. So I'm always really keen to give people that responsibility, and to ensure that we hear their voices, and also to learn by making mistakes. I mean, I know that I've learnt more by what's been screwed up than necessarily what I've done right, or watching other people go, well, I don't think I would have done it that way. So let people make their mistakes. That's a big part of it.
I think that's just really, it's so bang on. I think it's freeing as well, isn't it? As soon as you acknowledge that there's a real joy in a mistake and what it can bring to you, it really frees you. And I think, what you've said about, the fact that often in the industry, it feels like people are scared to let more people in and to really encourage that. But I think what is so striking about the park since you've opened it is the incredible projects and opportunities you have. The Prism project and the Script Acceleration project you have to welcome young people in. I wonder whether it was in part your time at the Regional Theatre Young Directors Scheme that kind of showed you what it could be to really be welcomed into a theatre. That kind of inspires that work.
I mean, I think I would say I've had a nice broad range of work. So I did the RTU IDS, and that gave me incredible experience at running a kind of mid to large scale theatre. In my case, it was Palace Theatre Watford. They were also going through a major Arts Council refurb. So although I wasn't directly involved in that, it was kind of interesting to observe from the sidelines how an NPO navigated through a huge funding application. But I think partly where the ethos of Park Theatre has come from is a sense of wanting to be a space for everyone, wanting to ensure that we give a voice to those who want it. And to be a safe space. We talked about a rehearsal room where you need to be able to voice your opinions, whether it's right or wrong, or ideas. It's that safe space, because I find that when you have a safe space of working, that's when you come up with some really exciting things. For example, I have a writing partner, and we've done 5, nearly 6 shows together now, and there's nothing we can't say to each other. And there's a sort of unwritten rule that, and we both do it to each other constantly, if we just kind of go and censor ourselves, the other one will go, no, come on, what was it? It was a really shit idea. I know. And it was a shit idea, or maybe it wasn't a shit idea, but even if it was a shit idea, it will lead somewhere, and then we'll end up going, oh, and then you get somewhere else. So nothing is sacred, everything is worth exploring. So having a safe space. And I think that one thing I felt from some regional theatres and some theatres in general that I had been to was that there could be a little bit of an us and them between a company coming in and the staff who work in the building. And I really wanted to address that. So, just simple things that I had seen at some theatres where, whenever we have a company in here, no matter if it's a Park 90 show, a Park 200 show, a co-pro, our own show, a completely external guest producer, we have a meet and greet, we go around, we say who we are, we have tea and coffee and a biscuit, and then we see each other in the building, and we respond to that, and it's a very collaborative process. So I think that's what I wanted to do here, to create a very collaborative building, a very friendly building. In the first few years, and this has continued, every email that's come in has been answered, even if it's, sorry, we can't help at this time. But we don't want to be somewhere where you just send an email to and you don't get an answer. And that was important when we were building, because we didn't have anything. We didn't have a reputation. What we had was, our word and our own, I guess, reputation that we were creating. That we wanted to make sure that we were, kind and polite and courteous and responsive to absolutely everybody, no matter whether they had a question about, can I donate some money, or something's wrong with the website, or I went past and saw the hoarding, are you going to be opening next summer as you planned, or whatever. Everyone was responded to, and I think that kind of ethos we have kept through till now.
I think it's really brilliant, and I loved that distinction that you made, because I think the term safe space, as with any term that I think becomes importantly popularized, there can sometimes be a bit of misunderstanding about that being a place where everything's, a marshmallow and you can't say anything, you have to be, and that distinction and knowledge that kindness and politeness goes alongside with like a rigorous work, and you can challenge people and say, I think I might have a better idea, or I don't know if that works in the way that it should, within that structure and framework of trust. I think that's so important. This is probably a question that, again, might not have a speedy answer, but I'd love if it's possible. I know that you produce shows, you have touring shows in, but I'd love to, if you don't mind, kind of talk us through the creation process, I suppose, from finding a script, finding an idea you're really passionate about, getting that through to opening night. Can you tell us some of your favorite parts of that process?
Yes, I can. Hold on a minute. Look at this dog. She's just jumping about everything. Marnie.
So lovely.
This is Park Theatre dog in training. I used to have Hazel. She was a wonderful dog from Battersea, and I got her when she was 1. And this is the first dog I've had since she's a pup, and she's it's quite a handful looking after a pup. But, people, you will come here when we're open, and there will be a very well-behaved, mature dog parading around through the press nights, as Hazel used to. But forgive us in the interim, as she's just displaying her puppy nature. So back to your question, the creative process. I mean, obviously there's so many strands to this, and there's so many routes into production. I suppose the two main routes we have are a submission process, where we put out that we are accepting plays in from producers, so plays that can have external production, external money behind them, and we ask for a synopsis, and we ask for a script, and we ask for a budget, which is very important to see how producers have budgeted. You can often tell a lot from how people have done their budgets. Usually the big trap is people spend too little in marketing. I always say we did the Ian McKellen show here before it toured the UK, kind of started it here for a couple of weeks as a big fundraiser, and it sold out like that. But we still spent a couple of grand marketing it, in order that when people did know, it sold out like that, but they've got to know in order to buy. So marketing is really, really key. And we look at all that, and we look at the team, and do they have any casting or casting ideas? Do they have a creative team involved? And essentially we based on initially the script and then the vision and team for it, decide whether it's something that we feel would suit our programming. On the other side of it, we have shows mainly for our larger space that don't go through such a formal submission process, but that come to us via some connection. It could be an actor who's got a play in their back pocket, or a writer that we know through some network who presents us with a play, or a literary agent, who says there's this play. And that, for an organisation like us that don't have and can't afford a large literary department, or any literary department, having a filter of a literary agent is upstaged again. Stop barking at shadows. Come here. Having a
interested in a career as a literary agent, perhaps.
I think that is what I'm getting from this. I think this is her critique of me now. And she's feeling I'm not being eloquent, I'm not being to the point, I'm not giving her a chance. So it's a really important filter, because at least, if someone's got an agent, they've kind of filtered it down, and so the quality of work from an agent tends to be better. So those are kind of roots in. But in terms of work that we look for, I've always been very story driven. I'm not an ideas play person, an abstract existential play. Let me just get her.
Yeah, nice.
And then see if I can sit her here and we can edit this bit.
Oh, yeah, lovely. That's totally fine. Oh, this is such a pleasure, Jez. Thank you so much.
What do you do? Come here. Come here. Hold on a minute. Well, I'm just going to bear with me a minute, Evvy, yeah?
No rush at all.
Wait, Mandy, wait. Wait. Sit. Good girl, lie down. Lie down. Lie down. Good girl. Okay. Hilarious. How do you want to segue this back in?
Sorry, say that again.
I said, how do you want to segue this back in?
Oh, yeah, sure. Maybe I'll ask. You were talking about literary agents. Maybe.
Yes.
Shall I ask about how you find scripts? And shall I just ask you the question again? Is that annoying?
Fine. Well, I said the one route, didn't I? About submissions, and then you can say what's the other route, and I can talk about that way. Yeah.
Fabulous. So other than submissions, perhaps something that an agent would suggest. What are the other routes through which you kind of find?
Well, the other routes are generally connections that we have through. It could be an actor who has a script. It could be a writer. It could be a literary agent that presents a script. And it tends to be that sort of lands on my desk. And then, in terms of the creative process, I would say I would read it initially. I might suggest that we do a reading of it. Sometimes that's a private reading. More often than not, it's a public reading. When I say public, not to the general public and paying tickets or anything, but we have a big database of volunteers here. We have volunteer ushers. A nice thing that we do with them is we invite them to things like readings. The same with all our donors as well. So that just gives us a nice kind of quite a good cross section actually of people to get feedback on it. So it lets us hear it out loud. It gives us some feedback on it, and then usually that may go through a process of dramaturgical work. I've done a lot of development of plays, so plays that have been on here, even ones that we haven't necessarily produced. I talked about how we work collaboratively. Same with the producers. We work with some shows if they need it very collaboratively, and there have been shows even that we haven't produced that an external producer has done, but I have been very heavily involved potentially in the sort of dramaturgy of that play. We tend to do a lot of new writing, and obviously those need work, because we all know an Arthur Miller or a Tennessee Williams, and the general public doesn't realise that those plays have been through all that process. It's just that now they've got the refined version that's been done 1,000 times around the world in multiple languages. But in order to get there for the first one, it's a very important bit of the creative process, because the writer, however good they are, even if it's a writer of that standard, writing a new play now, until you hear it in words coming out of real actors' mouths, it's never quite going to be the same. And that might mean that things that you thought worked didn't work, or things that you thought didn't, or you weren't sure about, actually work brilliantly, because somehow the actor does something with it as it comes alive. So that's a really important process, and the feedback of that. And then we would go into rehearsals with a play. I would pretty much say that never is the rehearsal draft, the performance draft. So, however much dramaturgical work you do prior to rehearsals, and every time you go, yeah, we've really done the work on it. This is like 7 drafts. We've done 2 readings, got the feedback, through it ourselves. Yeah, no. This time we won't work. Oh, it will completely change again. And that's the joy of it. That's the fun of getting people round the table and on their feet reading a new play. That is really an important part of breathing life into these words. And of course, your viewers may be interested to know that it even extends beyond that. I mean, theatre, unlike TV and film, the advantage, I suppose, in this sense, is that it is a constantly changing organism. As they say, it's no 2 shows are the same. Every show is a unique live experience, and most shows are similar. Mostly the words are the same. The audience is different, and therefore that magic reaction between the stage and the auditorium changes. But there have been lots of instances. La Cage aux Folles, that we just closed, the first ever English language adaptation of the original French farce. Everyone knows the musical, but the original farce has never been done in the English language, and we did that. And Simon Callow adapted it beautifully for us. And, even through to the last night of that, we were still going, because you just want to make it perfect. And you can in theatre because you're constantly changing it. You're live, it's not recorded.
Mm-hmm. I think that's something really magical. And from what you've kind of spoken about today, through that process of sitting at the back of the theatre and understanding what all of that tinkering can do to an audience, that kind of constant quest to improve it and make it the best thing it can be. I feel like that does fit so beautifully. It's definitely my experience of theatre as opposed to film. I think it's lovely to be able to come off stage and think, what can I do tomorrow? Or what can I do tonight that will just push that a little further in the direction I want it to go?
Yeah.
I think that's really exciting. Is there anything about being an artistic director of a theatre that has surprised you? Anything that you weren't expecting before you kind of created the part?
I suppose I wouldn't say surprised or weren't expecting, but I think the reality of certain things hits home. People always say an artistic director is going to 10% direct and 90% manage and operationally run a building. And the reality of that has definitely hit. There is a huge amount of work, and let's not mention COVID for now. We can talk about that if you're interested, because I've got plenty to say on that. But just outside of that, generally, there is a huge amount of operational, financial, legal, HR, contractual, all of that kind of administrative work that goes into running a theatre, plus of a theatre our scale, and this is the same indeed if larger scale buildings from the Young Vic up to the National, that it's very much about fundraising as well, and anyone running an organisation has got to be absolutely deep rooted into the fundraising of it. I mean, we're a charity and we have to raise £300,000 in a good year on top of all the income we get just to break even. So fundraising is key, doing galas, meeting donors, working out events, coming up with concepts for fundraising shows, all those different things. And it's a phenomenal, it can be a phenomenal drain on your resource, both sort of emotionally and in terms of time.
Absolutely. I mean, I would hope that it makes the joy when you do get into a rehearsal room even all the more, but I mean, it must just be absolutely constant.
It is relentless, but as you say, you at least have that in normal times.
Normal times,
you have the joy of occasionally being able to go in and direct a show, and of every day an audience coming in and enjoying various shows, and that's the most wonderful thing. And as I said, that harks back to me as that 14-year-old kid, so I will always carry that.
Yeah. I think as well, the fact that the park does do so much, I feel like, the way, like you mentioned, the volunteer ushers, and the fact that must just draw in so much of the community around you and the theatre. And I feel like that quest to make sure that what you're doing in the theatre mirrors the community that is outside of you, it must be incredibly satisfying. And I wonder whether that's at the forefront of your mind often, or whether that is a byproduct of just that kind of welcoming kindness that you spoke about, or whether that's
something goes hand in hand. I mean, you know, people joke when, and this is a rarity, but you know, you get a difficult customer when you're running essentially what's a public building. You're in really a sort of customer facing role, and you deal with all sorts of very strange people and very strange situations that I won't go into, but you know, things that people just wouldn't believe. It's like, what, who said what, or what happened? But you know, so there is that kind of joke about, you know, theatre would be fine if it weren't for the audiences. But that is, you know, I don't believe that. That's you know, one person out of 1,000 giving the general public a terrible name. But no, theatre for me is all about the audiences, and so those two things, as you've mentioned, go absolutely hand in hand. So we are constantly thinking about our community, our volunteers, how we're nurturing a group of people who will stay, attend shows, support us, spread the word, bring in the next generation of people who will do the same. So absolutely, audience development is key, and it's got to be key for any forward-thinking theatre.
Definitely. And as you program your seasons, that must be, you know, a big part of it, looking for something that's going to appeal to everyone. How does that process work?
Well, yes, I remember when I was at the Palace Theatre Watford under the RTYDS scheme, Lawrence Till, who ran it then, had a saying. I'm not sure it was his saying because other people have used it, but I mean, a sense of you give them a couple of things they know, and then you give them something less familiar. I think that's what people try to do in regional theatres quite a lot, you know, because regional theatres are desperately trying to do new writing, but some of those audiences are quite tricky in terms of the plays that they will attend, and you immediately see a drop in box office figures if you program something that isn't by a known writer. So it's kind of give them a couple of things that are known and then something unknown, and having enjoyed the known ones, hopefully they'll take a risk and then go, well, it's your brand, so I'll see it because I like the last two shows, even though it's not on Arthur Miller or anyone I've heard of. So there's a kind of sense of that as a truism across the industry. I mentioned, I think before, that we do a majority of new writing. The reason we do so much new writing is quite interesting. I mean, I would always want to do a lot of new writing. I would say probably more than 50%, so that would be the majority. But I mean, our majority is probably nearer 80%. And the reason is, as an off-West End venue, it's very difficult to get the rights. And the situation with the rights becomes almost comically absurd, where you have a production of The Milk Train Doesn't Stop Here Anymore by Tennessee Williams in New York, let's say next year. I'm being hypothetical, that's happening in New York next year. Because of that, they may want to take the Broadway production to London, if, and because of that, they don't want not just The Milk Train Doesn't Run Here Anymore, but any show by the same writer in a particular square footage, diameter of London, radius of London, within the same year. So because someone is, potentially just got the rights and hasn't even programmed it yet, but just got the rights to, a show by a well-known writer, no one in a different country the next year could do any of those writers' shows. I mean, I don't know why they often do that. They always oversaturating. Well, we'll just put, if we're doing Miller, we'll do All My Sons and make it all about that, and then let someone do. Why can't I think of another Arthur Miller play?
The Crucible. Oh.
Thank you. The Crucible. Well, no, I mean they're completely different, but yeah. So there's a lot of weird anomalies like that. There's also a lot of the bigger theatres and the bigger producers holding on to rights. So they'll buy the rights and buy an option and they're sitting on it. And I mean, I know plays that I've asked for years and someone's got it and they've had it for 10 years, So a lot of the new writing we do is the reason we do 80% majority rather than 55% majority is actually because that's what comes on our desk. That's what lands on our desk, because it's so hard to get those other plays. Interestingly, when we've done those other plays, and we've done the first revival of Richard Bean's Toast and the first revival of David Hare's Vertical Hour, and you get those little nuggets, and they've sold out, because people remember they saw it once. It was 9 years ago. They haven't seen it since, and that does really, really well. But it can be tricky. So, sorry, I started talking about new writing, but what was your original question now?
No, it was really fascinating. I think I was talking about programming an entire season, but I think you've answered that. I mean, beautifully.
Yeah. So then give them something. Yeah. Well, I suppose so. So now relating back to what Lawrence Till said, give them a couple of things that they know, and then slip in something that they don't, because we're almost too far the other way. We end up giving them, 3 things they don't know and rewarding them with one they do. So it's a bit of a challenge, and I suppose the way round that is just to ensure, or attempt to ensure, that every show you do is of a certain quality, that that people do start to take a punt, that they go, well, actually, it's a Park Theatre show. Like people say, it's an Almeida show, I'll just book the next show at the Almeida. They don't care what it is, because everything at the Almeida is great, everything at Don Mar's great. It's cultivating those audiences, and so that's what we endeavour to do, and also, of course, it comes down to that sort of awful thing of star casting that everyone reaches for. But that's why, because we know that if we do an unknown play by an unknown writer, and we put that on and it has an unknown cast, it's probably going to struggle to sell at 60%. If we have a star in it, it will sell out or sell at 90%, even though everything else is unknown. So when you're a charity and you're having to raise £300,000 a year on top of all income just to keep alive and keep breathing, you can't turn down those opportunities. You've got to make sure that you try and have a sort of business decision about some of those, and that will ideally afford you to have less of a business decision about some of the other plays, that you go, okay, well, we've done that one and that one. Now we can take a risk on this play. It doesn't matter if we don't get a star name in it. We're going to commit. It's going to happen on that day because we really love this writer. It's an important theme, but you can only do that with a balance.
Yeah, completely. And that must feel like so much of what your job has become. You're an artistic director, but a lot of what you do is finance and fundraising.
We've done it all here. We've cleaned the toilets, we've hoovered the floor, we've served at the bar, we've had a drink with Benedict Cumberbatch, we've directed Ian McKellen on stage. It's like from here to here, it's all encompassing.
Yeah. It's so impressive. I'll just ask you a couple more questions, if that's okay.
Yes.
So it's, obviously 2020, this is 2021. It's been just a kind of unfathomably challenging period of time for so many people, for so many reasons, for theatres especially, for our industry as a whole. The answer to this might be no. But I wondered if there's anything that this period of time has taught you that you will try and take forward into the future of the park and your work?
Well, I mean, it's taught me personally to even more than I probably had been, to really be grateful for what I've got. Some people have been hit so terribly badly by this, and I've been lucky. I have a job. I've been working very, very hard for the last year, but that's a privilege in a way. I'm not on the breadline. I have a family. I have a wife and a kid and a puppy, as you've seen, a disruptive little pup, and an incredible theatre to run and to come back to and bring back for the audience. So I suppose learning how lucky we are and how unlucky, unfortunate, disadvantaged other people are, and seeing how this is really, sadly, only increasing the divide between rich and poor, between privileged and disadvantaged, and thinking, how moving forward can we help to try and address that. I think it's also given us time to reflect. I think on a positive note, it's quite interesting that, we're all kind of go, 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 go and working 10,000 miles an hour. And suddenly we've had a year without shows. And I mean, in some ways, I haven't had much thinking time because the fundraising and, we were facing potential liquidation last May. I had to stave that off. And it's been quite relentless. And you do a lot of work and then rip it up the next day because of the sort of constant changing of the landscape. But in some ways, with other people now coming back on part-time furlough and, looking at setting up working groups, and there's an ability to reflect, to really strategize, to think without having that next show coming up about what our reopening will look like. I mean, physically in the building, we've done some really exciting changes. We've used it as an opportunity. We've done some refurbs that would never have been possible without going dark for 2-3 weeks, which would not be possible because we couldn't financially do that, because they would be so disruptive to having audiences in, various bits of building works and maintenance. And we've created a new box office and, some really exciting changes that I think our patrons will see when they come in, which hopefully will add to that, along with the sort of artistic ambition and vision for the future, will all add to that sense of a slight rebirth, a slight reset. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And I feels like there's been so much of that in the world, in the industry, certainly. It can be really frenetic. It can be, this treadmill of auditions, and for you creating shows, it can feel like you never get any time to just stop and breathe. And I think, I don't want to underplay how hard this has been and how devastating for so many people, but to have some time away and realize what you miss and what you love, I think has been for some people valuable. I would love to know, finally, what is it that you are most looking forward to when the doors of the park reopen to the public?
I mean, there's a few things, if I'm allowed to have a multiple answer. Oh. No, one answer.
One word.
I think, we did 2 events only since March last year, 2 events. They were socially distanced, and one was with our volunteers and one was with our donors. And they were just kind of keeping in touch, communicating, me on stage, chatting, essentially. And even that, with masks and social distance, after months of being in the building, brought an incredible sense of pride, I think, to a lot of people. Like, Park Theatre is here. We've helped them survive. We are proud of this space, and we are here in this space. And joy, we are elated to be in a theatre again. People just almost couldn't believe it. And I remember waiting in the wings to come on, and I heard a couple of people saying, "Oh, isn't it just incredible? Just being in a theatre is wonderful to be here. Oh yeah, well, the last thing I saw was and chatting away. It again goes back to me as a 14-year-old boy. It's that nurturing the audience. So seeing the joy on our audience's faces as they walk in the building, as they see a show, I think is really going to be exciting. Just having this, as I described it earlier, ghost ship, which it really is now, inhabited. This is a creative space. And, you just hear a sort of slight hum of a few fridges and a bit of aircon at the moment. And in fact, a few weeks ago, you didn't do that because we turned everything off. It was this sort of deathly silence. But I've got the aircon on because I would be very cold otherwise. So I think having the ghost ship finally breathe back into life, and it's going to be breathed back into life not by me sitting here talking to you, not by even the whole team getting back, but by the audience, but because that's what we do it for, by the audience coming in to see the work, by once again being that communal melting pot, that cauldron of ideas. And so that's what's really exciting. Personally, I'm also really excited about a show. I'm going to be writing our next fundraiser show. We did a very successful fundraiser in 2019. I almost said last year, but 2019, which was called Who Done It Unrehearsed. I don't know if you came across that or heard about that.
I did hear about that. I did.
Yeah.
Yes.
So totally bonkers. It's a concept I came up with where you rehearse a play, everyone knows the lines, there's costume, there's lighting, there's set, everything as you would expect, but you throw in one person into the mix every night who plays one role, who has never seen the script before and never watched the play or anything like that, never read a word, and they're given an earpiece and they're fed the lines. And they're put into a costume and fed the lines. So it sort of appears like they're almost rehearsed. They're in this otherwise completely rehearsed play and they've never done it before. And we did it as a celebrity fundraiser. And my writing partner, Mark Cameron, and I wrote then the play. And it was a whodunit. And every night a different celebrity actor came to play the inspector. And we had a great wealth of stars, from Gillian Anderson to Damian Lewis, Jim Broadbent, Joanna Lumley, Ruby Wax, John Bishop, Ronan Keating, the incredible number of people. And the audience buzz was fantastic. You knew it was going to be one of them, but you didn't know who you were going to get until it was announced on the night. And they've all intimated that they'd love to do it again. They had such fun, and even the words got round, and it feels like there's a lot of other people who are now interested in it. So the idea is to use that as a fundraiser again, to do Whodunit 2 Murder at Sea this time. So that's what we're going to be working on. It will fill the building with joy, with laughter. It will raise much needed funds after such a difficult period for the last year, bring a smile to a lot of people's faces, and just be a great way to engage with our audiences. So I'm really looking forward, again, artistic director, 90% everything else, 10% directing. Also to do that little 10% bit of directing where I step upstairs into the rehearsal room and from nothing create all the magic that is going to bring joy to people.
So brilliant. It's such a great idea. And I definitely think that, just like you say, that injection of joy, not only into the building, but into people's lives, the audiences, the people who volunteer. I think, you're so bang on with what you just said about taking pride in your community hub and feeling like you're kind of an intrinsic part of the running of it. I think it's just so valuable to people, both in their careers and also, in their kind of outside and free time. It's excellent. Thank you so much
Thank you.
Today. It's been a genuine pleasure, and you've been so generous with your time and your answers, and I wish you all the very best for, the coming months, and I cannot wait to come back. So
likewise, I wish you all the best, and I have to say, and I've been trying to bang this drum as much as possible, that people like you, the freelancers in this industry, are the ones that have really suffered, and we can do all we can to bring back and sustain our wonderful venues, our buildings up and down the country. But what we don't want to do is get to a stage where all the venues open and there's no one to populate them, because it's the freelancers who provide the work, the actors, the writers, the directors, the designers, the costume makers, the stage crew. And I've been really upset and angered by the government and how they have let those communities slip through the net. So I hope that things will get better. We're trying to do what we can to support freelancers here. I wish you all the best, and look forward to maybe raising a glass in this very building with you at some point in the future. It was lovely to meet you. I
certainly hope so. Oh, so nice to meet you. I can't wait to meet the puppy.
Absolutely. All come and meet the puppy.
Yes, exactly. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Right. Take care.
I'm going to end the broadcast. Thank you.